We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email John at nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Good evening, welcome to nufc Matters with me, Steve Wraith. Supermac and Gibbo join me as always on a Thursday. Two legends. Good evening, Malcolm. Good evening, John.
Hi,
morning,
Steve.
boys.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And transfer deadline day, or as better known in Newcastle, Thursday.
I'm really disappointed. I'm still here.
Well, yes, Malcolm, you might have to get your boots off. I've seen your old sparring partner, Bernie Slaven, saying he's getting his boots on for Borough after they've sold the centre forward. But yes,
no.
Quiet day on Tyneside. Isaac Hayden in the last hour has joined Queen's Park Rangers on loan for the rest of the season. And of course,
comment on that.
Well, what you said off screen is probably not suitable for on screen, Malcolm. I'm protecting your reputation as well as the show's. And obviously Harrison from Manchester City, a young protege, has signed for an undisclosed fee, highly rated at Manchester City. He has joined Newcastle's ranks. Recently made his debut for the under-21s at Man City. Not made the first team yet, played in the under-18s, but one for potentially now and one for the future. We will wait and see, but another youngster coming through the doors. Other than that, nothing else. So, Malcolm, quiet day today for Newcastle, as expected.
Yeah, I don't think it's just Newcastle that it's been a quiet day for. I think it's generally across the board that there's very little business going on. FFP has obviously made clubs think very carefully and tighten the purse strings, and I think that makes people think a little bit clearer about the whole situation. If you want to do a good deal, wait till the summer. There aren't good deals to be had in the winter generally.
Yeah, John, it comes to something when the two biggest transfers today and the two biggest headlines, I should say, today on Sky Sports News are that there's been a Formula One signing for Ferrari. Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari. That's the lead headline. The second headline is that Fury and Usyk is going to be live on Sky Sports box office. There's your two big headlines today. Other than that, Pritchard leaving Sunderland to go to Birmingham is probably your main transfer. I've never known a transfer window as quiet, John.
No, I was going to say we normally see Jim White on, or have in past years on deadline day, and it's been absolutely fabulous. We're sitting there, and it's coming in from all over the shop. With Newcastle, the only concern Eddie Howe has had was making certain that none of his big hitters went out. And he said a few days back now, he said if he reaches transfer deadline day, and he has everybody still at the club, he'll be satisfied. He didn't want to sacrifice any particular top name player to get another one in, and that's what would have had to happen. I mean, you know, if we're truthful, I'm looking for a terrific window this summer. We need that because the last two windows, have been very underwhelming. This one, absolutely, because we've signed no one at all, apart from the young lad from Man City, and that's much more for tomorrow than for today. We've signed no one at all in this winter, in this window. In the last window, we signed 5, but none of them have had an impact on this season. I mean, nobody knew what was going to happen with Tonali. We couldn't have foreseen that. You couldn't have foreseen the horrible injury to Harvey Barnes, which has kept him out all the way. But after that, it was 2 fullbacks, one on loan with a view to sign permanently this summer, and the other permanently. But they were reserve fullbacks. They weren't immediate first team fullbacks. They were reserve fullbacks. And the young kid who was immediately sent out on loan to Feyenoord. So, the last 2 windows haven't produced anything of significant consequence so far. Yeah, 50-odd million for Tonali, but, we need a picture of him to put on the mantelpiece now, so we'll recognise him when he comes back, because we haven't seen him I think I've seen a dodo in Jesmond Dean since I last saw Tonali, but then it's about the same with Harvey Barnes, and it's about the same with Nick Pope, and it's going to be with Joe Linton. We are just losing people all over the shop, but very.
You'd hope, John, wouldn't you, that when we do see Tonali, that he's fluent in English, because he's had all the time in the world to learn. I was
going to say,
I doubt it.
He could take 8-hour lessons a day, couldn't he? At the moment, there we are. I mean, as I say, it is disappointing because we all fans thrive on transfers, don't they? Who's coming in? What will we get? What position is it? We all love all that. It hasn't happened. Have we got enough? Well, it depends, I suppose, what we're aiming for. We've got enough to be in the top half of the Premier League. We've got enough to get in the smaller European competitions. We may have enough to win the FA Cup if we get a good home draw in the 6th round and get past Blackburn, of course, which I would expect us to do. We're overdue a home tie, for goodness sake. But we probably haven't got enough to get in the top 4 and get back in the Champions League. That'll take some doing. But the Villa results transformed everything. We've now got if we continue to play like that, that was the old Newcastle United, the one we saw last season. And with the 3 games that are immediately to come in the league, home to Luton, away to Forest, home to Bournemouth, and an FA Cup tie at Blackburn, which isn't bad, guys. We could have been away to Liverpool or away to Man City, we're away to Blackburn, who are a poorer Championship side than Sunderland. The table says so. So it isn't bad. So, the season can be rescued, the second half of the season, to a great extent. And I'm praying for that.
Obviously, we'll keep an eye on the transfer window over the next 50 minutes. If there's anything does crop up, we'll let you know. But it's highly unlikely, I would have said, with regards to Newcastle. And maybe if there is, it might be another outgoing on loan. Lots of people suggesting maybe Lascelles could go, etc. Well, we'll wait and see. Paul, you're right. The most important signing we made today was getting the new physio in from Bournemouth. He's going to have his work cut out with our injured crop. But Malcolm, John mentioned Villa. That was great. I mean, I went for a 2-2. I thought Newcastle would get something down there. I was confident. I think something that really's gone under the radar, mainly because it doesn't put Newcastle down, which is what a lot of the media like to do, is that we've now had 3 back-to-back away wins, something we've struggled with all season. And I don't care who it's against. An away win is an away win. 3-0 at Sunderland, though. Could have been the biggest banana skin of the season. That we won 3-0 comprehensively against our rivals. We then went to Fulham, which, as you know, and John knows, is a tricky game to manoeuvre in the FA Cup. Another potential banana skin. We went down there and we won 2-0. And then we went to Aston Villa, who've not lost a game at home all season, and who completely took us apart down there last year. Certainly we're looking for revenge after we humiliated them 5-1 at St James's Park at the start of the season. And we've gone down there and beaten them 3-1, and it could have been more. Yes,
and if all they had to do was beat Newcastle and they would go second.
Yep.
So there was a huge amount on the game the Aston Villa players. But I have to be honest, I had a real awful feeling in the pit of my stomach about the game, and I watched the match with a small group of Newcastle fans, and they were all so confident that we were going to do the business down there, and I was sort of sat there going, no, you're all kidding yourselves, you're mad. And of course, it finished up that they were able to take the mickey out of me all night long. And I thought that Newcastle were absolutely terrific on the night. I was so delighted with the way that they played, but I was somewhat surprised. And I've been told by those guys as well that I am to stop complaining about Sharp going forward into the penalty area.
Yeah, I never thought of that, Malcolm. Yes, that's been your nightmare late in the game, hasn't it?
Hasn't it just? Yeah. So
you know what I think he was doing? I think he was just rehearsing and putting in his claim that with Isaac getting injured and Wilson permanently playing Hopalong Cassidy, I think he was trying to put forward his claim to be Newcastle centre forward, goal scoring centre forward, and he didn't do a bad job of it.
He didn't do a bad job at all. No.
I mean, the wonderful thing for me is that we smacked Aston Villa and put them in the box, because they've attempted this season to be the new Newcastle United and do what we did last season, getting into top four and looking the side everyone adores and all that. Then I sent a little cryptic message to a friend of mine who's an Aston Villa supporter and asked him if he would please look at the stats for this season, and he would find out that Newcastle have played Villa twice, beaten them twice, 5-1 and 3-1, which is 8-2 on average.
Yeah,
certainly put them in the place. If we thought we did well to beat Fulham twice recently, which we did, three up here and then down there in the cup, Aston Villa's score was fantastic. And when you think of their home record, they'd gone a year virtually without a defeat, while we had lost 8 of our last 11 and had an awful record at Villa Park. We couldn't even score a goal there. I thought we were terrific. Absolutely terrific.
Other than those few minutes around the goal that they scored late on in the game, Newcastle were way on top throughout the rest of the 85 minutes or so.
There's no question. And as you know, Malcolm, if you're a home side that's half decent and they're a home side that's half decent, you're going to have a 10-minute spell. They were always going to have a 10-minute spell. Yeah. And you know what I liked about that 10-minute spell, Malcolm, when we were under the cosh and they scored and they got a second that was offside, was that Howe saw what was happening and reacted immediately. Byrne had been doing very well at fullback. They brought Bailey on, and Bailey was taking him to the cleaners. He was going outside, he was coming inside, he was running off his shoulder. I mean, poor old Dan Byrne looked like a corkscrew. I thought he was going to twist and turn himself into the turf. But he saw that. He immediately said, right, we're going to double up on Bailey. So he moved Byrne in to play as a third centre-half. We went to a back line of 5 and he brought Livramento there. So every time this guy attacked, he was faced with either Tyne or with Dan standing behind him. And he still looked dangerous, but nowhere near what he had. We tactically changed things. Instead of it being like for like in the change, which is often what Eddie and most managers do, replace a centre forward with a centre forward. We changed things and it nullified them. They died and we got back on top and just saw the game out. I thought it was very clever tactically. Very clever.
Yes, it was. And the players reacted so well throughout the whole game, I thought, to all sorts of situations. There is one thing that I really, really want to take issue with, because I was shocked to see in the paper in the morning that that Newcastle's third goal, it was an own goal.
Yeah.
And Murphy, he had played it at goal. It was on target, and the fellas just slid in and helped it go into the net.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point, Malcolm, and I thought it wouldn't be an own goal. Yes, it took a complete diversion and went in the other side of the goal to it was going in. But if your shot's on target, you're normally given the goal, and his shot was absolutely on target.
Yeah.
And yes, it was going inside the far post, and it went inside the near post, but it doesn't matter if it's on target. And I felt so sorry for him, because if you remember, he was interviewed live after the game and told by the girl interviewing him that his goal was going down his nose. And he said, "Oh, crikey me. After 5 months out, that's what I get." I mean, he's such an infectious personality and a lovely personality. And my heart went out to him, because I'll tell you something. For a kid that's been out so long with a dislocated shoulder, he's come in at Fulham and at Villa, started in both when you thought he wouldn't never last the time because of the length of time he's been out, and his contribution was immense in both games.
Yes, absolutely,
I think he's done terrific. He's done terrific under very adverse circumstances.
Yeah. In all honesty, I cannot see how on earth they can give the goal as an own goal to the guy who's trying to stop it from going in the net, and he's failed miserably. Whereas Murphy, his intent was to stick it in the net, and so you've got to go with the intent. Surely, I just can't see how on earth they can give it to a defender who is trying to stop it from going in the net. Might get a touch, but all he's doing is helping it on its way.
Yeah, it was cruel to Jacob.
I feel sorry for Murphy.
It made no difference to us, but it makes a lot of difference to Jacob. It's a shame.
Yes.
And then he asked after that, then, all right, if it's not my goal, I think he's terrific because he's good fun. If it's not my goal, then can I have the assist? Can I have the assist, he says.
Sure.
He's a character.
There was a particular game. It was against... I was actually playing for Arsenal in the semi-final against Leyton Orient, playing at Stamford Bridge. And I've knocked a ball across the 6-yard box, and the defender slid in and knocked it into his own net, and I claimed the goal. And so there was a massive, great argument about this afterwards, and I said, well, who is to say that I didn't look to play it in off the defender?
Yes.
But are you trying to say that the defender has purposely knocked it in his own net? No, he's trying to keep it out, whereas I'm the one who is looking to stick it in.
No wonder you scored 30 goals every season, Malcolm. No wonder you scored 30 goals every season, mate, if you claimed all the in-offs as well.
Well, John, the art of being a really good goal scorer is, as soon as the ball crosses the line, is get your arm up in the air straight away.
And I think in our day, Malcolm, they more or less give you those ones if you did that. It's only now they go technically. I think in OG... In OG in the 70s, you had to turn and lash the ball past your own goalkeeper. For an OG, you didn't get them like you can't get them now.
Oh, talking of goalkeepers,
listen, we won 3-0. I mean, it was awful for Jacob, but we won 3-1. Sorry,
3-1.
3-1. I'll settle for that. If we beat Luton 3-1 on Saturday, I don't care if it's 3 own goals. I'll settle for a 3-1. That'll do me.
Yeah,
I'll tell you what,
absolutely.
the
Yes,
one
indeed.
you're saying, Mal, and I follow you absolutely totally. The one thing for you that was sad was that own goal that Murphy deserved it, and I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. The one sadness I had was yet again a key player went off injured.
I'm going to mention this because
Exactly.
Mike Stewart said, is Isaac just having a bad run of luck, or is he going to be missing half the games every season moving forward? What do you think, guys?
I tell you what, it worries me because, I mean, he went down with his groin. He's done that before with his groin, where he suddenly sits on the turf, waves to the touchline and says, I can't continue.
He's been told to do that, John. He's definitely been told to do that. If you feel the slightest twinge go down, I'm sure he must have been told that.
Well, I mean, I think that often is a tactic if it's during a game to kill a game, and so. But this was with a genuine injury. You know what? Is about the next worst record for injury after Wilson. And the trouble is that both centre forwards, we are likely to go in against Luton on Saturday, our starting 11 without a centre forward, because I can't see Isaac making the game on Saturday. Not a chance when he has a groin like that. Not a chance. And if he doesn't, is Wilson anywhere near starting?
Yeah. He is. He's not far. He's not far off. He's not far off.
That's the phrase. I'm sick of that. Everybody's been not far for so long. I mean, honestly, Christmas isn't far off, according to Eddie.
Do you not think, though, John? Do you not think, John? First of all, when he goes down because of his injury problem, I think this is a persistent groin injury. I think there's two options here. He's been told that he probably needs. Well, this is hypothetically here, but I would suggest he probably needs surgery on it. But because they know they can't spend money in January, they can't afford for him to have surgery and be out. So they're having to do what they're doing, John. I think that's I think they're having to. The old phrase is make do and mend, and that's not satisfactory. I'm not saying it's right, but you're right about Wilson and Isaac. They're both made of fiberglass, and I genuinely think Eddie knows that they haven't had money to spend. He'll have been told that they hadn't had money to spend long before this transfer window. He's been playing it down for weeks. We've now not brought any players in other than a youngster who probably won't feature. I genuinely think he's been told you're just going to have to make do and mend until the summer. And I think this is them saying to Isaac, the slightest discomfort in that groin, sit on your backside and we'll get you off. And I think Gordon, you know, at the start of the season, John, when we were talking about centre forwards and we haven't brought another one in, or a goal scorer, centre forward, whatever you want to call it, he said, you've only got 2 strikers at the club. Do you need another striker in this window? This was the summer window. And he said, no, we've got 3. We've got Isaac, we've got Wilson, we've got Anthony Gordon. And I think Gordon will get the job. The problem we've got with that, of course, is he's now 1 booking away from a 2-match suspension.
Yes, Gordon will get the job. I was going to say to you, Steve, and I follow your theory there absolutely, totally. I was going to ask you one question before I come back on. Do you expect to see Isaac on Saturday?
No, I think Wilson will play. I think Barnes and Wilson will be in the squad at the weekend, and I think Isaac will miss Luton, but I think he'll be back for Forest. I don't think it's a serious injury. I think he's come up as a precaution. He looked fine. Eddie said as much in the interview after the game.
When your 2 centre forwards are Isaac and Wilson, and it involves them, they're all serious injuries.
The decision will have to be made if Gordon gets booked on Saturday. He'll then miss Forest and Bournemouth, and then I think he might have to play Isaac if he's not 100%, or Wilson if it's basically taking one game at a time. You can't look ahead, but I think that's what'll happen. I think if neither Wilson or Isaac are fit on Saturday, Gordon will play through the middle. I think if Wilson is fit on Saturday, I think Wilson will play through the middle, and I think Gordon will play midfield. And of course, then we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the bookings. We've got two of our main players this season, Gordon and Guimaraes, could both be missing when it comes to Notts Forest.
And both of them are walking yellow cards, Steve.
Yeah, 2-match bans, both of them.
I mean, Of course, Gordon will play false nine because that's what he did for England under 21s.
Brilliantly.
And did it very, very successfully. And is a terrific player. And in theory, we can get away with it with Murphy fit again, because you would go Gordon through the middle, Murphy one side, and Almira on the other side. All three are lightning fast, but what concerns me, none of the three are automatic goal scorers. So who scores the goals against Luton or anyone else if your two main centre forwards, neither of them start? The worry is, where do the goals come from? And they might come and might win.
Absolutely.
Barnes played up front.
These are 3 games. There's a hat-trick of games coming up that we've already lost to each of them.
Yeah.
And they are probably the 3 worst results that we've had so far this season. We've got beat 1-0 at Luton, we got beat 2-0 down at Bournemouth, and we got beat 3-1 at home to Forest. And we need to get our own back.
What's your thoughts on the injury, Mal?
Sorry?
What's your thoughts on Isak? Because you've been in that position. you were incredibly fast. Somebody mentioned your superstars earlier on, saying that because your video is doing the rounds on social media again, and superstars doing the 100 meters in 10 seconds, and basically he's quick. He's a very quick player, and obviously that brings problems in the modern game. But Malcolm, what was it like for you? I mean, groin issues. How can that be impeded?
I was very fortunate, Steve, that I had very long hamstrings.
Yep.
And therefore, I never had a hamstring pull at all during my career. And groins, never had a problem with a groin. Just now and again, maybe the odd little twinge, but that was it. I never really got a groin injury as such. And so they never prevented me from playing or training. Thank heavens.
Do you think I'm right,
so
Mal?
I was fortunate in that respect.
Do you think I'm right on this, though? Do you think maybe he might need an operation, and they're having to do this balancing?
I wouldn't know, Steve. I wouldn't know. The last thing you do is
operate.
do a medical operation. That's the last thing. It's the last resort. Because once you start going in, then it leaves you impaired.
Yeah.
It never heals correctly. It never heals properly. That you're always left a little bit impaired.
Yeah.
So no, an operation is the very last thing that should happen.
I think they're hanging back. I might be wrong, but I think they're hanging back. I think if he's got a persistent groin injury, they're going to need to look at it in the summer, and hopefully it'll not take too much out of him. But
and usually what the medical people will say, because it's them that really don't want to start operating on somebody who needs his athleticism. And probably what they'll say is, but look, rest will do the job. So here's the summer. Get him to rest as much as possible right the way through until pre-season training, and then get him working back into things.
I think one thing that's certain from everything we've just said there, and everything we know anyway, is that Newcastle must buy another number 9 in the summer.
Oh yeah.
You can't go into new season with Wilson and Isak with their fitness records as your only 2 recognised finishers from the number 9 position.
Yeah.
You cannot do that again. It'll cost you. It could cost us in the second half of this season, but it'll certainly cost you next season. We have got to sign a centre forward in the summer.
Yeah, Definitely have. Okay, we're halfway through the show. As always, we'll go to the ads and then we'll be looking ahead to the weekend's game. And that'll be after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks again to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. If you'd like to order some, then give them a call on 01768 210 102. Go to the website, mrvickies.co.uk, or drop them an email, info@mrvickies.co.uk. A big thanks to United Group Travel. They're a family firm based in Morpeth with pickups throughout the Northeast. No strangers on our tours, just people you haven't met yet. They've got a presence on Facebook and a website, unitedgrouptravel.com. If you want to make a booking, give them a call on 01670 632 460 or mobiles 0791 666 4174 0795 71 41654. Thanks to Darren Baldwin Funerals, independent funeral directors. Let us look after you in your time of need. They're based on Old Durham Road in Gateshead, and you can contact them at their website, darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk. Email darren@darrenbaldwinfunerals.co.uk or give them a call, 0191 478 2730. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And a big thanks to New Workwear. You can find them at newworkwear.com. If you want to help the channel, hit the thumb up to subscribe, hit the subscribe button, and share to your other social media. You can also pay a one-off fee of £25 to get a scarf, a cup, a pen, and a membership card. Go to the website, nufcmatters.com, and click membership, or put your smartphone over this QR code. We also support the food bank on this channel. If you want to make some donations virtually, go to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk and make a donation today. We're also a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcast providers. Just search NUFC Matters. I'm also a part of the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show. You can listen to that Monday to Friday, 7 till 9 at the tooneuk.com. Okay, welcome back to NUFC Matters. Another bit of transfer news. Jordan Cronin has just announced that Jay Turner-Cook has been recalled from his loan spell at St Johnstone. The midfielder just made 6 appearances for the Scottish Premiership club, so a bit of a wasted loan deal that. Don't seem to be having much success with players going out. Maybe time to look at that, I think, at the club, trying to get the best out of these potential moves.
Doesn't that tell a story about the player? You know, he goes on loan for a bit of experience at St Johnstone, and
I mean, Shola's in charge of loan deals. I'm not sure, what his experience is in that department, and maybe we need to look at somebody who's got more of an experience in that. I know Rome wasn't built in a day, but he's an ex-player, the Mackham Slayer, as he's fondly known. But I don't think he got the experience in that market, and I just wonder sometimes about the appointment of him as the man who does the loans. But we'll wait and see. He may come up with something over the course of the next 6 or 7 months, which might surprise us. But we'll wait and see. John, I just go on. Yeah, go on, Matt.
Sorry, I was just going to say I'm absolutely staggered that football clubs, they have somebody employed just to sort out the loans.
Yeah.
So how many people are there who are actually overall doing what the old style football managers used to accomplish?
Yeah,
because the managers used to do all the transfers, all the loans, all this, all that, and still get out and do the training with the players.
I think the idea, and yeah, Malcolm, I follow that totally. I think the idea as well with the modern world with the loan manager is that not only does he do the loan transfers, but he then, during the season between now, when the window closes, and the end of the season, he not only keeps in touch with every player that's out there on loan and sees how's it going and what he and does his morale. He goes and watches them play, watches different people play that are on loan to see what progress they make during that loan, to see if they're worth bringing back, like, say, Joe White, and sticking into the first team squad, or whether you've got to find them another loan deal like the boy out of St Johnstone, or the senior players like Hendrick and Hayden, and that you've just got to get back out there as quickly as you can. It's a different world, but yes, it's a lot different these days to what it was then. But there we go.
Yeah, big difference. We've got a couple of questions from Alan Little for Gibbo. He says, does Gibbo remember a night game versus Ipswich Town in 1977, or ish, he says, when the floodlights went out for a while? Players went off till the lights came back on.
That's a good question. 1977 floodlights. Well, I mean, I've been kept in the dark many times in my life for an awful lot of reasons, and that was probably that was probably another one when Newcastle were trying to keep me in the dark. I can't, but I remember with floodlights in the early days, not just the early days of me travelling with Newcastle United, like 77, but way back before that, when I was a bairn and floodlights were in their infancy, and they used to, in the days when I was a kid, they used to be on, can you remember the sort of telegraph poles that used to be along the popular side with the lights on the top of them? I mean, you got more lights off the street lampposts than you did in those days. And if the ball went into the corner flag, they played in the dark for 5 minutes before they emerged from the shadows and booted the ball down the field. And it was all sort of hitty-missy in the old days when you look at how brilliant lights are now. But I remember vaguely sort of occasions where lights went out or they dimmed. And of course, what I remember as well is when I owned Gateshead, and we didn't own the ground at Gateshead, the International Stadium. It was owned by the council, and the council had to make their money and had to be careful how they spent the money, and I followed all that. But we used to have floodlights over there. It started brilliantly, and then bulbs used to go out, and the council didn't replace the bulbs. So the wattage on the lights, on the floodlights, got smaller and smaller with more and more bulbs out as the game went on. And then we went through one season during my 10 years at Gateshead. We went through one season where the lights went out completely. And when it come to the winter on a Sunday, we had a kick-off at 2:00 instead of 3:00, so we could complete the game in daylight. I mean, that is the real world of football when you've got to do that. But we did have that season. I loved it because I was working on the Chronicle, and they were wonderful to me. They allowed me to go across and to Gateshead, and they allowed me to go to key games away. And I remember on those 2:00 games, that I used to go across the Gateshead and watch the first half till 2:45, lash back to the Chronicle for the Football Pink to come out with the 3:00 kickoffs, and I'd seen the first half of my club playing, and then I went across at full time and joined in the drinks if we'd won, or the commiserations if we hadn't. But fun days, good days.
Great days. And the answer to this question, Alan, is yes. Gibbo will do another show about his music and showbiz experiences. We have talked about it. It's just getting the time to sit down and do it. And I just want to mention the wonderful event that we did last week, John. You had a great night, didn't you, with three legends at Newcastle?
Fabulous. The whole night was top of the range. I mean, I was walking. I had to get there early. You told me to get there early, Steve. I had to get there early, and I did get there early. And I'm walking down. I've been parked up at St James's, and I'm walking down to go with my wife to see to the theatre. And there was queues outside. It was wonderful to see. I went backstage and peeked out through the curtains. 3 levels packed, and that's what Newcastle United are about. If you produce good sides like the Entertainers were, and these 3 boys were the prerequisite of the Entertainers, Waddleby, Edgley and Gascoigne, 3 wonderful guys. They set up the modern Newcastle United by getting us out the doldrums, getting us back in the top division and then KK come back and we had the entertainers per se, which was fabulous. But that night was extra special. The lovely thing about the three kids is not only were they superstar players, but all three are raconteurs that tell great stories. So they entertained as footballers and they entertained on stage. And the wonderful thing, Steve, everybody and Malcolm will agree with this. Everybody talks about something that as if it's absolutely new. It's never been seen before. And of course, there's no such thing as anything new. Everything has happened before. And we are talking about what we might have to do against Luton because of injuries to Isaac and Wilson. And we're talking about false nines and Anthony Gordon playing that as if there was never such a thing as false nines. I'll tell you, if you look at that class of 84 we did on stage, Steve, there wasn't a centre forward in that team. We had a false nine. You look at Keegan, Waddle, and Beardsley. There wasn't a centre forward there, but they were terrific together, and they played with what would be called these days a false nine.
Big shout out to Andy in the chat, the Villa fan who likes to pop on and see us. He went, good win for you boys the other night. Absolutely outplayed us. I was fuming. Up the Villa. Thanks for joining us, Andy. Good to see you on here, mate. And I'm sure you'll have better days, but all good wins, winning runs do come to an end. And that was that. So looking ahead now to Newcastle United's next game. And here we are again, another Malcolm McDonald derby. Luton.
Yeah, they're coming thick and fast, aren't they?
They're coming thick and fast, aren't they? Yeah, Luton Town at home. Saturday it sees Newcastle host the Hatters for the very first time in the Premier League. It's an old-fashioned, non-televised 3:00 kickoff. It's sold out, and the visitors have took 3,188 seats, which is their maximum allocation. So well done to the Luton Town fans. They want to come and see a bit of history, which is great. Following losses to Nottingham Forest and Manchester City, Newcastle are bidden to avoid a hat-trick of successive Premier League home defeats for the first time since February 2021. Luton Town have failed to win any of their last 14 games at St James's Park since a 2-0 FA Cup success in 1973, which is the year after I was born. In the league, only Luton have left St James's Park with maximum points just once in 23 visits, and that was a long time ago. The reverse of 1973. 1937 was the last time they won. Wow, that is going back in time. Newcastle's team to follow, of course. Eddie Howe will be holding his press conference tomorrow. As for Luton Town, there may be a debut for their new Japanese international defender, Daiki Hashioka, after he completed a transfer from Belgian side Sint-Truiden on Tuesday. And Luton come into the game unbeaten in their last 6 league and cup games. 2 draws, followed by 3 successive victories, the latest of which was a 4-0 slaying of Brighton at Kenilworth Road on Tuesday. Adebayo hit a first-half hat-trick in that game. So no TV coverage for this one. Will be live on BBC Radio Newcastle and BBC Radio 5 Sport, of course. Hospital Radio Tyneside commentary is accessible if you're in hospital as well. Referee is Tom Bramall. This is his second Newcastle United game of the season for the Manchester-based referee. The first was his 2-0, the 2-0 Premier League win over Burnley. And on VAR, which is often switched off at St James's Park, is Michael Salisbury. There is a special offer on to season ticket holders at this weekend's game. Free travel on public transport has been offered. And don't forget the food bank will be outside St James's Park, opposite Shearer's. The usual stall and bucket shakers will be on Strawberry Place. And Jamie Rubin will once again double all cash donations, which are made on Saturday. So, Malcolm, a big game for Newcastle to put right what went wrong at Luton.
Oh, crikey, yeah. I thought it was a disaster down there. And Luton, they really did their homework very well. And that they caught Newcastle out on the far post. Quite simply, Newcastle don't have a man for corners on the far post. And Luton made the most of that. when they scored the only goal of the game. And Luton's a difficult ground to play at, and I think Newcastle felt that. But well, now we're at St James Park. I'm looking forward to seeing Newcastle seriously get their own back for that defeat, and I wouldn't say take Luton to the cleaners, but certainly it's about time Newcastle started sticking the ball in the net and making plenty of chances through a game at home. And if we're 1-0 up, for heaven's sake, nearing half time or nearing the end of the game, let's just shut up shop. I'm sick and tired of seeing Newcastle United giving a game away in the last few minutes of either half.
Yeah, I mean, this really is another big game for us. We're hitting a nice little spell of games now, John, aren't we? With if we can just get a little bit of luck with injuries, this really, the next 3 sets of fixtures: Luton Town, Nottingham Forest, Bournemouth. This they really could see Newcastle hit a purple patch.
Oh, I mean, that's essential, and that is a real positive. And the reason I feel so reassured is because of the performance at Villa. I mean, the result was fabulous in the FA Cup at Fulham, and that's all that matters in the FA Cup. The performance was not as good as it might have been, but the performance as well as the result was great at Villa. That wasn't a smash and grab. That was the old Newcastle dominating Villa. And, people have said to me, because there's always a matter with Geordies, is your pot half full or is your pot half empty? And people have said to me, when I've sort of got wildly enthusiastic about Newcastle coming up to this one of 3 winnable Premier League games, and then after Arsenal, a winnable FA Cup tie that would put us in the quarterfinals. What a real opportunity this is, a real opportunity. And people have said, but Gibbo, you've got to remember, who on earth saw Luton beating Brighton 4-0? And my answer to that, Steve? Who on earth saw Newcastle beating Villa 3-1? I mean, our result at Villa, I would suggest, was more eye-popping than Luton's against Brighton, because Brighton are adored and then have these horrible days where they throw in a desperate result. I remember just before they come to us last season, they beat Wolves 6, they beat Manchester United 1-0, and then they were home to Everton and lost 5-1. Then they went to Arsenal, who were going for the title at that time, won 3-0 and come to us and lost 4-1. They throw in daft results, and if they get beaten big. And that's what Luton did to them. And I'm not underestimating Luton, but the sensational result was ours. And if you look at the situation, I mean, we are at home this time. We were awful at Kenilworth Road. We got beaten and we got taken. But this game isn't at Kenilworth Road, it's up here. And we've won 8 of our 11 in the Premier League up here. And Luton's away record, they may have won at Everton last time out in the Cup, 2-1 with a goal at the death, but it's 1-2, drawn 2 and lost 6. They're still fighting for their lives. They've got out the bottom 3 for the first time. Their biggest threat is twofold. One, it is the huge togetherness they've got. If we match that, we win, because we've got the superior players. We've got to match their togetherness and their tenacity. And the other is they're great on set pieces. They've gone to Everton twice this season in the league and in the cup and won both times. And all 4 goals were scored off set pieces. Big lads in and doing the business. Now, we are set up to combat against big lads when you think you've got Botman and you've got Shaw and you've got Byrne all back there for if we, as long as our big lads are alert and don't let their fellas on set pieces run off the back of them. If you stand still like Gray's Monument, it doesn't matter that you're the same size as Gray's Monument. You'll still concede goals because you're standing still. We defend did brilliantly at Villa, and I think Botman and Shaw are getting back because Botman has got fitter and fitter and fitter after his layoff. And I
Also,
think
John, on that,
the way they did last season. I think they're defending them too the way they did last season. And if we look after that, then I think we win against Luton. I do say that what I've said is that I worry where the goal scoring is going to come from if we are unable to start with Wilson or Isaac. I wonder where the goals are going to come from. And then to steady my fluttering old heart, I look at the Aston Villa game and say, well, a forward didn't score and we scored 3. Shaw got 2. So I think with or without one of our centre forwards in the starting lineup, it'll make the difference between it being comfortable and it being tough. But I still think Newcastle will win.
Okay, John. Also, and I totally agree with all that you said about the defenders, but I have the feeling also that behind them is Dubravka, and he's playing really well at the moment. He's looking super confident in all that he's doing and confident in those in front of him.
I'm glad you said that, Malcolm, because he's been not slaughtered, but he's been sort of dismissed as inferior to Pope, and I understand that. And when he first come in the side, he wasn't as slick as he can be, and we got a few bad results that weren't necessarily down to him, but it doesn't look good for a goalkeeper. But he was an honest servant of us in the past and a terrific servant to us in the past. And I think recently, he's looked a good goalkeeper again.
Yes.
He's got back in the groove and he's looking a good. He's made some saves that have been quite startling. And if they'd been made by Pope, we would have said, wow, what a good goal. He has done well for us recently. And I'm thrilled to bits for the boy because he's a nice boy and he's had a tough time.
Sure.
And had to bite the bullet.
If there was one thing that he could improve on, I want to hear him come screaming for the ball. He doesn't shout enough. He doesn't make his presence known. He doesn't let defenders know that he's coming for a cross or indeed not coming. And so I'd like him to be a lot more verbal.
You're right, Mal. But of course, you never change the habits of a lifetime. And when he's in his 30s and he doesn't do that, he's not going to start to do that. That's what you want your goalkeeper to do. And Malcolm knows that particularly as a player. And as your back four, they want to hear the goalkeeper and know what the goalkeeper's doing. But if that's not your style and you've got to your mid-30s, you ain't going to start doing it. That's not going to happen. But
here's a question for you, lads. Nick Pope's due back now in March. He's going to be hoping to get himself back in the team to play, some part in Gareth Southgate's selection for the Euros. Does he come straight back in, Malcolm?
In all honesty, I don't think he's got a cat and mouse chance of getting into the England squad.
Do you think he comes straight back into Newcastle's team when he's fit?
I personally, I would say yes. Once he's absolutely fit and he's got all his reflexes going, then I would say yes. But England is a quite different situation, and I am not so sure that Southgate fancies him very much.
I mean, the truth is on the England situation, Steve, he was out the England squads before he got injured.
He was. It was more about
before that. He was out. But having said that, you know what will decide whether he comes back in the Newcastle team, Steve, which is the question you're asking. You know what will decide whether he comes back in March is what we do between now and March. You're asking what's going to happen with Newcastle in 6 games' time or something. Well, if Dubravka has kept 6 clean sheets, he can stay out for another week. If Dubravka is letting them in, he comes straight back in. The next X number of weeks, X number of games will decide that. But like Malcolm said, I don't think he'll get it back in the England squad. But
No, if you remember that Ramsey was dropped at Arsenal, and Southgate kept him in the England side.
Yeah,
well,
true.
Phillips and Henderson last played when that Dodo was in Jesmond Dean for their clubs, and is still in the England side. So it's quite incredible, really.
Yeah.
Interesting that it's an interesting, because I think most people would say, yeah, if Dubravka's in form, it's got to be difficult for Pope to get back in. Certainly there was talk about Newcastle potentially chasing down a goalkeeper this window before we realised we couldn't spend any money. That might be, if Dubravka carries on in the same vein, it certainly might have changed Newcastle's ideas for the summer transfer window. We'll wait and see. Subsequently, when players come back, that's good to have competition. It's good to have healthy competition. The midfielders are gradually going to come back in, but we mentioned it at the top of the programme. Bruno and Gordon are going to be missing, just as Harvey Barnes comes back to fitness. Joe Willock's not too far away. As well, he'll be coming back into contention, you would imagine, within the next 4 or 5 weeks. So it's very difficult to predict who's going to be in what position and when, because our injury list doesn't allow us to have any choice anymore. The team picks itself. That's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's the exact point. That last sentence you said, Steve, is exactly what we've been about. The team picks itself. That the midfield three is going to be Bruno, Longstaff and Miley, regardless of how they play. And the front three was going to be Almiron, Isaac and Gordon, regardless of how they played, as long as they were fit, because that's all we had. When competition is healthy, the trouble is there hasn't been competition either for the team or from the bench. And that's been Newcastle's problem all season. I mean, as I say, we've looked at the bench and thought, who can we get coming early out of school, out of kindergarten on a Saturday? Who can we get they can come out at 2 o'clock so that they can sit on the bench at 3 o'clock? Because we haven't been able to fill a bench. Wouldn't it be wonderful when we could play, say, the team that's going to play on Saturday, and then we could have Willock on the bench, and we could have Harvey Barnes on the bench, and Callum Wilson on the bench, to go with all the defenders in the midfield guys. It'll be wonderful to get back to anything that's near full strength, because that has been the big problem. And of course, it's frightening, as you say, Steve, when you mention that 2 more lads, never mind injuries, 2 more lads are just booking away from going missing. And I tell you what, both boys are a walking yellow card.
Yeah, no, they're definitely
are. Yeah, they are. And John, I really do think that that the players have gone way overboard in some of the stuff they do on the pitch, and it gets them bookings, and it's all so unnecessary. Can you remember a player getting booked and really sort of saving a situation and taking a booking for it? It doesn't happen. It's all stupid, niggly stuff that they do, bad-tempered stuff, and it's all so unnecessary.
I know. I tell you what, Malcolm. I tell you what. I'm looking. I'm looking on Saturday for. I've said who will score the goal. Now, supposing it's Bruno and we win 1-0, I'm suggesting Bruno scores a winning goal. He goes rushing over to the cameras, pulls his shirt over his head. It says underneath, "Get well, Big Joe," and he gets a booking for doing that, and he's suspended. That's the sort of look we could have.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to go for a 3-0 win for Newcastle on Saturday. Malcolm, what are you going to go for?
2-0.
And John?
I'm going to take Newcastle to win 2-0.
I was thinking exactly the same before Malcolm said it, 2-0. It depends. If we have one of our centre forwards, it might well be the 3-0 Steve's talking about, but I'll settle for 2-0. You know what? I'll settle for 1-0 with an OG that we all hate. if it means 3 points. But I think 2-0, and I think it'll be relatively comfortable because we've got 50,000 Geordies determined to make it that way, and I do believe we'll win, and that's the only thing that really, really matters.
Get yourself over to the Tyneside Irish Centre pre-match. Gibbo will be there. It's his new place for the next 8 games. Gibbo and John Anderson will be giving you a pre-match talk in from 1 o'clock onwards at the Tyneside Irish Centre, just down from the Gallagher. So I look forward to seeing you then, John. Malcolm, John, thanks as always. See you next week, guys.
Indeed.
Take care, boys.
All right.
Enjoy.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Enjoy.